Hey, Girl Scouts. My name is Lauren Beatty, and I am a Community Development Manager out of the Cincinnati office. And today I'm here to talk to you about our Brownie Pets Part 2. We're going to hang out here for just a second and let everyone join in. So while we're waiting, I would love to know if anyone has a pet snake at home. So I put a poll in our Facebook Live here. So if you have a pet snake, make sure you hit yes. If no, hit no. And if you don't, but you're interested in getting one in the future, but no, but I want one, because I'm really curious to see what you guys have as pets. Hi, Caitlin. Good afternoon. So again, my name is Lauren Beatty, and I am a Community Development Manager out of the Cincinnati office, and today we're talking about our Brownie Pets Part 2. I know we met some of Marissa's pets way back at the beginning of when we first started doing these videos, so we thought it would be fun to switch it up and show some more of our pets. So if you are watching, if you want to hit yes or no, but I want one on that poll about if you have a pet snake at home, that would be awesome. And we'll give everyone about 2 more minutes to join us. So we are in the snake room of my house. We'll talk a lot more about the snake enclosures behind me here, but they take up quite a bit of room. So they hang out here in a room separately from the rest of the house, because not everyone wants to see a snake when they come over to visit, including my grandparents. They actually joked with me when I got my 2 pet snakes that I must not have wanted them to come over anymore, which was not the case. Hi, Buffy. No pet snake, but would love to have one. That's awesome. Very cool. We'll give everyone 1 more minute to join in. But today we're going to be talking about steps 1 and 2 of your Brownie Pets badge. We covered 3, 4, and 5, I believe, earlier with Marissa's video. If you want to head back in our Facebook Live archives and check those out and see if there's anything you're interested in there. She shared a couple of her pets back at the beginning of when we first started doing these videos. All right, looks like we are just about ready to get started. If you're just joining us, if you want to hit yes, no, or no, but I want one on that poll. I'm super curious if anyone has a pet snake at home besides me, or if anyone is interested in having one. Before I get my snake out, again, my name is Lauren, and I work out of the Cincinnati office, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the care of snakes today, how to keep them comfy, my 2 snakes in particular, and what they like and what they need to be happy and healthy living in a home like mine. So before I get my snakes out, I'm going to preface this by saying I know a lot of people are really scared of snakes. That's one of the cool things about doing these Facebook Lives is you get to meet and interact with my snakes without having them be right up close to you. So there's nothing to be scared of, I promise. But fun fact, I was actually really scared of snakes when I first started working with them. I started working with our local zoo 5 years ago, and the first time I held a snake, I cried. I was so scared, and I was just handed a really large snake, and I was not ready for it at all. But through working with them and learning a lot more about them, I discovered that the more you learn about them, the less scary they are, and I actually ended up liking them quite a bit, which is why I have 2 snakes as pets today. So it's kind of cool to show how you can go from being absolutely terrified of an animal to really interested and curious about them to actually having one as a pet if you're really, really passionate about them. So I'm going to get my big guy out first so you guys can see him. I have 2 pet snakes that live with me here in my house along with my 3 cats and a dog downstairs. So if you hear any loud noises or barking, I apologize. But I have a red tail or a boa constrictor, and I also have a piebald ball python. And piebald just refers to the pattern that he has on his scales. But we're going to get my big guy out first. His name is William Snakespeare, and he is a red tail boa or a boa constrictor. So give me just a second, and we're going to grab him. All right, so this is William, and William is my 6-foot-long red tail boa constrictor. I'm going to try to make sure you guys can see all of him. Now, boa constrictors are really, really cool They are a constrictor, just like their name implies, so they squeeze their food before they eat it. So he is a carnivore, and he here at my house likes to eat rats. Now, I don't just go outside and grab a rat. I don't have rats running around my house, I promise. I actually can go to a pet food store like PetSmart or Petco and buy frozen rats there for him to eat, or I can go to a snake or reptile specific store and buy rats there as well. The good thing about William here is that he feeds on frozen and thawed rats, so he does not eat live. So there is no rat sadness happening in my house. So he gets his food just like we get our food. They are frozen, they come in a bag just like you might get chicken nuggets from the grocery store, and then we thaw them out and he eats them about once every 2 weeks. So he is going to be really enjoying those. He actually just got fed three days ago, so he is good for the next couple weeks. Now, William is a pretty large snake. When I got him, he was about 1.5 feet long. Now he is, I'm trying to show all of him to you, about 6 feet or so, give or take. It's hard to get them to lay in a straight line so you can measure them, but he's about 6 feet based on the sheds that he's given us. So we've been able to measure his sheds a lot easier than measuring him. And he is not full grown, believe it or not. So he can get to be up to 13 feet and up to 60 pounds. So he is basically a teenager right now. I've had him for 4 years. So he's grown from about 1.5 feet long to 6 feet in about 4 years. So he'll continue getting bigger and bigger, which is why his house behind me is also really, really big. We actually built that for him ourselves. I'll talk a little bit more about that once he's out of my hands. I like to focus on him while I have him right here in front of us. Now, red-tailed boas or boa constrictors are snakes that live in Central and South America. And they can be found in kind of forested areas. So they are really good swimmers, but they prefer to stay on land. They like to live in hollow logs or abandoned burrows of other animals. And they can be up in the trees sometimes. He likes to climb, but he is pretty big, pretty heavy. So he spends most of his time kind of chilling in his little house. I have a piece of wood in here that he can climb on that I'll show you in a little bit, and some other forms of enrichment for him as well. So while he is fairly big at 6 feet, like we said, he could grow up to be 13 feet long. He might get to be about 60 pounds by the time he is full grown. And he, will live to be about 25 to 30 years old. So he's about 4 years old right now. So keeping him happy and healthy. So behind me, I have the enclosure that we built for him. And I'm actually going to put him down here for a little bit, so hopefully he'll move around. You guys can see him enjoy his space. Let's see if he'll put himself away here. He says no, he wants to hang out with you. There you go, buddy. All right, so this is the enclosure that we built for him when we got him when he was 1.5 feet long, which seemed like overkill at the time, but by the time he got to be 6 feet, it doesn't seem like overkill so much anymore. So his enclosure that we built is made out of plywood that we got at your local hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's, I can't remember which one, but we made it out of 2x4s, some plywood. It is 5 feet long, lengthwise, and then 3 feet deep, and then 2 feet tall. So it's pretty sizable. It's extremely heavy. We're on the second floor of my house right now, so it was a job getting it up the stairs and around the corners and up here. And it's also on a stand that brings it up to about 2 feet off the floor, so it's a little easier for us to access to get him out to hang out or to clean his enclosure. The insides look a little bit like rock work. I hope you guys can see that. We actually built that ourselves too. So we sculpted that out of foam and sealed it and then painted it to look more like rock. So each one of those rocks on the walls of his enclosure are hand-carved pieces of foam that we put up just for fun. Usually inside he also has a hide. I took it out for now to make it a little easier to see him, but his hide looks just like his rock work, but it's a little shelter for him so he can go in there, burrow. Snakes like to have somewhere to hide so they feel safe and secure, so it mimics what he would have in his natural habitat in Central or South America. He's also got a really big piece of wood in here that he immediately slithered behind. So I've got a nice big piece of driftwood that we baked in our oven to make sure it was clean. Nothing weird was on it when we found it. So he likes to rub up against this, hide underneath it, climb on top of it. It helps him shed his skin. Since he sheds, every time he grows, he'll give us little pieces that he rubs off on these pieces of wood that he has in his house here. So keeping a snake is complicated and not complicated at the same time. He really just needs a large enough space for him to stretch out. Your snake's enclosure needs to be big enough that they can stretch their entire body out. It's really good for them, healthy for them to be able to stretch their bodies to its full length, which is why this is not going to be his lifetime forever enclosure. So like I said, it's about 5 feet long. He's a 6 foot long snake already. So we are in the works of figuring out how to build his next house 2.0, if you will. But it works for us for right now. Inside, you might be able to see, I can actually bring you a little closer too, that there is mulch all over the bottom here. So you can use lots of different types of substrates for snake enclosures. We use cypress for him. So we have shredded cypress mulch that you can buy again at Home Depot or Lowe's in the bottom of his enclosure here. And it's about 2 to 3 inches thick. So it gives them opportunity to dig and kind of burrow the way that they like to, but it also helps hold the humidity inside his enclosure. Snakes like him from Central and South America really need to have high heat and high humidity, and cypress helps hold on to that. So in addition to the mulch that's in there, it's hard to see, I'll bring you guys closer again in a second, but he's got a couple lamps on the ceiling of his enclosure. So we have 2 different types of heat lights that are in the ceiling of his house, one for daytime and one for nighttime. So he has a basking spot and a cool spot. So right now, the bright side that you can see is the warm spot. So that area is going to be somewhere around 80 to 85 degrees. And then the cool end over here to the right, where it's a little darker right now, is going to be about 75 to 80 degrees. Overnight, it switches to a different light. And I actually have the light bulbs I'll show you here in a second to help give him that temperature fluctuation throughout the day, just like he would enjoy in his natural habitat. So during the daytime, he's got this very nice ripped basking spot lamp that's going to give him heat. It's going to simulate daylight, and it's going to give him the UVA light spectrum that he needs to stay healthy. And then at night, we've got our moonlight. This is an empty box. I have the real bulb for you as well. But this is going to give us our nighttime heat. So it's not going to be quite as bright. It's going to be a lot more similar to what he'd experience in his natural habitat. And I have that light bulb right here. So it plugs in to a light bulb socket, just like your normal ones in your lamps and stuff at your house, but those are mounted into the ceiling of his enclosure on either side. I'm trying to go through and check all of your comments as well. I promise I'll come back to them and check on questions too. So that is going to be his enclosure. Like we said, it has to be kept at a certain temperature and a certain humidity. So we do have a big sprayer for water. So if you notice that the humidity is not where we would like it, we can actually pump this guy up. Let me see if I can show you. And then spray the mulch. Ooh, didn't like that. So once we've got the mulch sprayed and that heat comes back when we shut the doors, it'll actually increase the humidity just a little bit, which helps keep their skin and their scales really healthy, makes it easier for them to shed. So that is going to be William's house, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about him as well. But I want to show you my other snake's house too. It's up top. So he is much, much, much smaller, and he's kind of a special case. He's my special needs snake. So up top, this would have been 2 enclosures. We have the door off this one because we don't have a third snake, so we use that area as storage. But my second snake, Christian, my ball python, lives up here. So I'm going to shut these doors so we can see him. Now the enclosure up top is a professionally made enclosure. It is one that you could purchase online. We could purchase one of a similar or larger size for William as well, but they are outrageously expensive, so we found it a lot just more cost effective to make our own. But for the smaller sizes, it was easy to just buy a pre-made one for us. Up top, you can see that he has the 2 light bulbs as well. So he has the bluish light for nighttime and the brighter basking light for the daytime. So he has a cool spot and a warm spot too. I'm going to bring you up so you can see him. So he's got a stick in here that he likes to wrap up and climb around. He's got his water bowl, the same cypress mulch that his big brother Williams downstairs uses. And he has a hide as well that I've taken out so you guys can see him a little easier. But I'm going to try to bring him closer so you guys can see him up close. right, so I saw someone in the comments ask, does my snake bite? So everything with a mouth can bite, including you. You bite into chicken nuggets and hot dogs and hamburgers all the time. So everything with a mouth can bite, but typically they don't unless they're scared or if they're being threatened in some way. So this is my little guy, Christian, and he is a piebald ball python. So the piebald part stands for the colors that he is. Most ball pythons are going to be more of your olives, blacks, greens, browns. He's got that pretty white pattern on him, which is called piebald. So he, as a pet, typically would be a lot more expensive than your average colored ball python, just because of his coloration. So I had wanted a piebald ball python for a really long time, but I couldn't afford one. But I became friends with a breeder who breeds them and has them for sale at reptile shows. So he had one come out with a birth defect, and I don't know if you can see it. Here we go. Very well. But he is not turning his head. That is not on purpose. He actually has a spinal deformity. So this little turn in his neck, he cannot straighten his head out. So his head is at a 90-degree angle all the time. That's about as straight as he can get it. So because of that, he wouldn't have made a very good pet for someone at a sale. No one's going to buy a snake with a birth defect. And we weren't even sure at the beginning if he was going to survive. We weren't sure if he was going to be able to eat his mice with the bend in his neck like that, or if he was going to be able to shed properly, or if he would be in any sort of pain. So yeah, my friend asked me if I would be interested in taking on this special needs snake, and I said, absolutely. So he's been with me for about 3 years now. Got him just after we got William, and he, as you can see, is much smaller. Ball pythons are smaller snakes. They do stay fairly small. They stay under about 3 feet, but for having him for 3 years and for him to be this small, this is pretty tiny. So I don't know that due to his birth defect, if he's going to ever grow to be the size of an average ball python. We haven't been able to find any research or documentation to show what to expect with him. But I can tell you that he eats fantastically. So he eats much smaller mice than than William does, but he is able to eat his food no problem. And actually, when he opens his mouth, he can open his mouth to about the thickest part of his body, so about 1 inch to eat his mice. And when he eats that mouse, it actually bypasses the curve in his neck completely. So it kind of just does a little diagonal, cuts that corner, skin stretches, and he does just fine. He's able to shed. He doesn't shed as well as his big brother does, but he does shed. So he is growing, and he lets us hold him. He's never been aggressive or anything like that, so he's not in any pain. If he was scared or in pain, he wouldn't be this calm and chill. So he has some different needs than his big brother does just because of that birth defect. So he does eat smaller food. He eats a different type of food that we do have to go to a specific reptile store for. We can't just go to PetSmart or Petco or anything like that. But he does pretty well. But outside of his special food, his needs are the same. We take care of him exactly the same. He comes out with us, hangs out, watches TV. Both of the snakes really enjoy watching me scroll through Facebook on my phone. They find that really fascinating. And they're pretty chill. So we usually just hang out and watch TV together. So I'm going to put him back. There you go, buddy. And we can talk a little bit about what it's like having snakes as pets. I'm going to check through your comments and see if I've missed any of your questions. And tell you a little bit more about how we take care of these guys and make sure they're happy. So outside of their 2 enclosures, we do have to feed them. And when we feed them their food, that's when they're really hungry, right? They're predators. They're used to being out in the wild, hunting for their mice or their rats. So we don't like to feed them in their houses because I put my hands in that house. I don't want to have a time where I open the door, they think I'm a mouse or that I'm bringing them food. They get super excited and accidentally mistake me for a mouse or a rat. So we actually feed them outside of their houses. So I'm going to show you William's place where we feed him since it's a little bit bigger. So we've got a large plastic tub with some holes drilled in the top so air comes in. And when it's time to feed William, my big snake, his rats, we'll actually take him out of his enclosure, put him inside this plastic tub, and that's where he'll eat his rats. So he knows that when he is in that space, it is food time, he is getting food. When he's in this space, It's hangout time, chill time, play with mom time. So we like to keep those two things separate for him. Christian has the exact same setup, it's just much smaller, but he gets fed outside of his house as well. Like I said, he eats frozen thawed rats and mice, so I go to the store. There's one actually over in Blue Ash, pretty close to the office where Girl Scouts is. I pick up the rats. They come frozen just like your chicken tenders would at the grocery store, bring them home. They can go straight into my refrigerator or my freezer. The first time my mom opened the door and saw a frozen rat in the fridge, it kind of freaked her out, but she does well with it now. You just have to get used to it. They're in plastic, it's fine. And then we'll thaw them out before we feed them to the snakes. They're both pretty good about it. Sometimes snakes are a little bit pickier and you have to move the rat or the mouse around so they think it's alive. William does not care at all. He'll kind of just stare at it for a minute, but once he sees it, he'll go over. They do still bite it, and then they'll wrap their bodies around it, and they still constrict it and try to squeeze it before they eat it, because that's just how they eat in their natural habitat. All right, so I see some really cool questions over here. So the first question I saw was, how do I bathe my snake? So that is a really fun question. I don't typically give them baths per se. They're not dirty. They don't need to take a bath like you might bathe your dog. They don't bathe themselves like a cat would. But sometimes when they are shedding, their skin gets a little dry and they might need a little additional help getting that shed off of their bodies. So if I see that they have some spots, typically around their face where the shed is stuck, I'll put them in my bathtub to help loosen up some of that shed. And I actually have, I think, some of his shed. Hang on. It might be in the box that you're sitting on top of. I used to save them, but then we had so many shed pieces that I didn't know what to do with them. There we go. All right, so this is a piece of shed off of William. So this part, the pretty diamonds, would have been his back or his sides. If you see what you think is a pattern in there, it's kind of hard to tell with the light. You're correct, that is a pattern. So that's the same pattern that he has on his bodies, or on his body. And then this part right here would have been his belly. So that's the underside of him. So if I see any pieces of that stuck to his body, I might give him a little bit of a warm bath soak in the bathtub just to help loosen it up. Hi, Jamie. Yeah, I have 2 really big snakes at home. All right. Don't see any other questions for right now. So let's see. What have I missed? Care they need, keep them comfy. So we've talked a lot about their care and about their houses here at my house. But in addition to their house that they have here, they also need a little bit of extra care, something we call enrichment. So when we're talking about enrichment for an animal, it's anything to keep their mind or their bodies active. So that could be a puzzle, or if you're talking about your dog, it might be a new toy or a new ball or a puzzle feeder. Same idea for the snakes. Even though you might think they're just snakes, they are intelligent, they do think, and they need to be mentally and physically stimulated. So one of the things that we'll do is we'll put different types of hides or rocks or pieces of wood like that one in there and switch up their enclosure to give them something new. As we've learned now, we don't like being in the same room all the time, neither do they. So we like mixing things up for him. Sometimes we'll take him out and just let him slither on the carpet so he has a different feeling on his belly, different smells. I have those 3 cats that I mentioned and the dog that run around this room all over the carpet so he can smell them, which is really interactive and different for him. Sometimes we'll take them out into our backyard on really sunny days and let them slither around in the grass and feel that and get all of those new smells. And one of the things that we're working on that we haven't made quite yet is my favorite form of enrichment for snakes, which is called a slalom. I'll put a picture in the event page so you guys can see it if you're interested. But they actually make what look like, it's almost like a Plinko board that stands vertically with dowel rod pieces that come out so your snake can slither up and down it and imitate being in a tree or climbing. So that's one of the things that we're working on building for both of these guys because they would both be able to use it and really enjoy it. So it's not just the house that you're making for them, but it's also the activities and care that you provide them outside of that house as well. Now, for me personally, the impact on me for taking care of 2 animals like this, they're really pretty low maintenance. It's one of those pets where you can go out of town on vacation and you feed it the day before you leave, and then you're good for 2 weeks. As long as you know your power is not going to go out, or you can make sure that if your power does go out, if a storm comes through, that someone can come check on your snakes, you're good to go. But that being said, there is a significant drain on my electricity. So my electricity bill did go up quite a bit from having 4 heat lights running 24 hours a day, all of the time. Whenever we do have storms come through and we're worried about the power going out, we do have procedures that we have created in case we were to lose power for these guys, because they do need to stay warm. And it's not just the ambient temperature of our house. They specifically need to be in those temperatures that I talked about earlier. So we have smaller enclosures that we can put them into with their substrate and some heat packs and things like that to help keep them warm in an emergency situation if we had a power outage or anything like that. Outside of that, that's pretty much all that we have to worry about with them. I don't take them anywhere anymore. When William was smaller, when I first got him, when he was only about 1.5 feet, 2 feet long, we used to take him on road trips. He used to go visit my coworkers at the Cincinnati Museum Center pretty often. I actually took him to a restaurant once in my hoodie pocket, but now that he's 6 feet long, that's not necessarily plausible, and all the restaurants are closed. So they pretty much just hang out here with us at home. My partner's nephews and nieces come over all the time, and they love hanging out with the snakes, so we get them out and play with them pretty often when they come over. So does anyone have any questions or anything that I didn't answer about how to take care of my snakes, how to keep them happy and healthy? I can tell you a little bit more about their species if you're interested. I don't know if I ever actually said William's full name. So William down here is William Snakespeare, because I think all snake names have to be somewhat silly. So that's his name. And then Christian up top, he got his name from one of my coworkers at the Museum Center. All right, any last questions about the snakes? I'll get William out one more time just to show you, since he's still out and about, before we let him go back to his afternoon nap. So we made this so we could open both sides, which just makes it easier for us to get to him. We've got 2 just twist locks that secure the doors, and we actually found the glass. So the glass right here is glass, not plexiglass, on, I think, Facebook Marketplace from like a salvage yard. So we were able to repurpose that for the windows of his house. You want to come back out? Actually, he's being really cute, so I'm going to bring you close for a second. I don't know if you can see him. He's just checking you guys out. So actually, while he's still, he's showing off one of my favorite things about this species. So if you look at the tip of his nose, he's actually got a little mustache and a little goatee, which is why I wanted this species in the first place. He's actually pretty light for a boa constrictor as well. They're usually a little bit darker. And I don't know how much he weighs. I wish I could tell you guys how much he weighs, but I'm not certain. All right. Any last questions for William? I know one of the questions that I got a lot when I first got him is he endangered or threatened in any way? And they aren't considered endangered, but in some places they're considered protected or at risk, because a lot of people like to take them illegally out of their natural habitat as pets. He was raised in human care. He was born in human care. His parents were born in human care, so he didn't come from that. But a lot of times people will actually hunt snakes, not only for their meat, but for their scales. You can find things like snakeskin boots or belts or purses. So his skin is actually pretty prized for that. So that might be one reason he's considered protected in some areas. All right, well, I don't see any questions coming in. So thank you guys so much for joining William Snakespeare and I to talk a little bit more about Brownie Pets and about how we can care for our animals and make them happy and healthy in their homes. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you again. Oh, I saw a question come in, Claire sneaking in at the last second. So what does it mean when they flick their tongues? So snakes actually smell using their tongues. So he doesn't smell using his nose. So my first question is, do you think he has a nose? if he doesn't smell using his nose? Yes, he does have a nose. If you shut your mouth, what else can you use your nose for besides smelling? Breathing. So he uses his nose to breathe. If you've ever seen a mouth-breathing snake, it's really strange. And he uses his tongue to smell. So every time he sticks his tongue out, he's gathering all of the chemicals in the air that can inform him about his environment around him. So when he brings his tongue back inside, he's sticking that forked tongue up to the roof of his mouth. And then on the roof of his mouth, there is a gland called a Jacobson's organ. It's like 2 little pits on the roof of his mouth. So when that forked tongue goes into his mouth, he can touch it up to the roof where that gland is, and it's going to tell him what the smell is and which direction it's coming from. So if it's coming from the left or the right. That was a great question, Claire. He is really fascinated by this laptop right now. You say hi? I wonder if he sees the light. Oh my gosh, guys. I bet you didn't think this is how your Tuesday afternoon was going to go. So now you can really see his mustache and goatee that I love so much. And he's about to smack me with his really long tail. Oh my gosh. So he likes you guys, is what we just learned. He's showing off that beautiful coloration down the side of his face. Claire, you're getting an up-close look at what his tongue looks like when he flicks it. I see a question. Does he like being held? Yeah. So right now, I'm like a really warm tree for him. So he is going to just keep moving until he finds the most comfortable spot. He really likes being around my waist, my armpits, my hips, anywhere that's warm. I used to put him around my neck quite a bit, but now he just gets too squirrely. It's not that he's too large or that he could hurt me. He just moves too much for me to put him around my neck. But yeah, he likes being held. What? You're thinking. I'm glad you love him. I love him too. So like I said, I was absolutely terrified of snakes when I first started working with them. And the first time I held a snake, it was about this large and I just cried. But the more I learned about them and learned that really all they want to do is just snuggle and lay around, which is basically all I want to do, I really, really started to enjoy them. So I got him when he was a baby, about 1.5 foot long. Now he's a 6 foot long big man, and he'll just keep getting bigger. And he's one of my favorite animals to hang out with. Thank you for calling him pretty, I agree. We're going to put him back. Let him take a break. Let my arms take a break. If I ever end up weighing him and find out how much he weighs, I will come back and let you all know. All right. So if there's no last questions, thank you so much for joining, and we will see you again tomorrow at 10 a.m. for our next Facebook Live. Thanks so much. Bye.